dim light, it made him look strange and sorcerous. Bilbo stood still and watched. He loved smoke rings, and then he blushed to think how proud he had been yesterday morning of the smoke rings he had sent up in the wind over the hill. "Now for some music," said Throin. "Bring out the instruments." Killy and Philly rushed out for their bags and brought from back little fiddles. Dory, Nori, and Ori brought out flutes for somewhere inside the coats. Bumber produced a drum from the hall. Biffer and Boffer went out too and came back with clarinets. They had left among the walking sticks. Dwalin and Balin said, "Excuse me, I left mine in the porch." "Just bring mine in with you," said Throin. They came back with vials and as big as them, with Throin's harp wrapped in a green cloth. It was a beautiful golden harp, and when Throin struck it, the music began all at once, so sudden and sweet that Bilbo forgot everything else, and was swept away into dark lands under strange moons, far over the water, and very far from his hobbit hole under the hill. The dark came into the room from the little window that was opened that opened in the side of the hill. The firelight fickled. It was April, and still they played on, while the shadow of Gandalf's beard waged against the wall. The dark filled all the room, and the fire died down, and the shadows were lost, and still they played on. And suddenly, finally, first one and then another began to sing as they played. Deep-throated singing of dwarves in deep places of their ancient homes, and this is like a fragment of their songs, if it can be like for their song without their music. Far over the misty mountains cold, to dungeons deep and caverns old, we must away ere break of day, to seek the pale enchanted gold. The dwarfs of Yew made mighty spells, while hammers feel like ringing bells. In places deep where dark things sleep, in hollow hills beneath the fells, for ancient kings and elvish lord, there are many garming gold hoard. They shaped in wrath and light they caught, to hide in gems on hilt of sword. On silver necklace they strung, the flowering stars on crowns they hang. The dragon's fire and twisted wire, they mesh the light of moon and sun. Far over the misty mountains cold, to dungeons deep and caverns and old, we must aware ere break of day, to claim our long forgotten gold. Goblets they carved there for themselves, and harps of gold where no man delves. There lay the long and many a song was sung unheard by men or elves. The pines were roaring on the height, the winds were mourning in the night, the fire was red, it flaming spread. The trees like torches blazed with light. The bells were ringing in the dale, and the man looked up with face pale. The dragon's arrow, more fierce than fire, laid low their towers and houses frail. The mountains smoked beneath the moon. The dwarfs they heard that tribe of doom. They fled their hold to die and fall beneath his feet, beneath the moon. For over the misty mountains grim, to dungeons deep and caverns dim, we must away eve break of day, to win our harps and gold from him. As they sang, the hobbit felt the love of beautiful things made by hands and cunning and by magic moving through him. A fierce and a jealous love, that desire of the hearts of dwarves. Then something tookish woke up inside him, and he wished to go to see the great mountains and hear the pine trees and the waterfalls, and explore the caves, and wear a sword instead of a walking stick. He looked out of the window. The stars were out in a dark sky above the trees. He thought of the jewels of the dwarves shining in the dark caverns. Suddenly in the wood beyond the water a flame leapt up, probably someone lighting a wood fire, and he thought of all the flames. He shuddered. And very quickly he was plain Mr. Baggins of Bag Hand under heel again. He got a trembling. He had less than half a mind to fetch the lamp, and more than half a mind to pretend to, and go out again until all the dwarfs had gone. Suddenly, he were all looking at him with eyes shining in the dark. "Where are you going?" said Throin, in a tone that seemed to show that he guessed both halves of the hobbit's mind. "What about a little light?" said Bilbo apologetically. "We like the dark," said all the dwarfs. "Dark for dark business. There are many hours before dawn." "Of course," said Bilbo, and sat down in a hurry. He missed the stool and sat in the fender, knocking over the poker and shovel with a crash. "Hush," said Gandalf. "Let Thorin speak." And this is now how Thorin began. "Gandalf, dwarves, and Mr. Baggins, we are met together in the house of our friend and fellow conspirator, this most excellent, audacious hobbit. May the hair on his toes never fall out. All praise to his wife and ale." He paused for breath, and for a polite remark from the hobbit, but the compliments were quite lost on poor Bilbo Baggins, who was wagering his mouth in protest, beginning called audacious, and worst of the all fellow conspirator. Though no noise came out, he was so fluximored, and so Thorin went on. "We are met to discuss our plans, our way, means, policy, and devices. We shall soon, before the break of day, start on our long journey. A journey from which some of us, or perhaps Wizard Gandalf, may never return. It is a solemn moment. Our object is, I take it, well known to us, to estimate Mr. Baggins and perhaps one or two of the younger dwarfs. I think I should be right in naming Killy and Filly. For instance, the exact situation at the moment may require a brief explanation." This was Thorin's style. He was an important dwarf. If he had been allowed, he would probably have gone on like this until he was out of breath, without telling anyone anything that was not known already. But he was really interrupted. Poor Bilbo couldn't bear it any longer. At May never return, he began to feel a shriek coming up inside, and very soon it burst out like the whistle of an engine coming out of the tunnel. All the dwarfs sprang up, knocking over the table. Gandalf struck a blue light on the end of his magic staff, and in its fireworks glare the poor little hobbit could be seen kneeling on the hearthrug, shaking like a jelly that was melting. Then he fell flat on the floor, and kept on calling out, struck by lightning, over and over again. That was all they could get out of him for a long time, so that took him and laid him out of the way on the drawing-room sofa with a drink at his elbow, and they went back to their dark business. "Excitable little fellow," said Gandalf as they sat down. Again, "gets funnier at queer fits. But he is one of the best, as fear as a dragon in a pinch. If you have ever seen a dragon in a pinch, you will realize that this was only poetical exaggeration applied to any hobbit, even to old Took's great-great-uncle Bullroarer. Bullroar. Fu was so huge for a hobbit that he could ride a horse. He charged the ranks of the goblins of Mount Gram in the Battle of the Greenfields and knocked their king Golfinbull's head clean off with a wooden club. It sailed 100 years through the air and went down a rabbit hole, and in this way the battle was won and the game of golf invented at the same moment. In the meanwhile, however, Bullroar's gentler descendant was revealing in the drawing room. After a while and a drink, he crept nervously to the door of the parlor. This is what he heard. Glorian speaking. "Huh," or some snort snort, more or less like that. Will he do? Do you think? It is all very well for Gandalf to talk about this hobbit being fierce, but one shriek like that in a moment of excitement would be enough to wake a dragon and all his relatives and kill the lot of us. I think it sounded more like fright than excitement. Have been sure we had come to the wrong house. As soon as I clapped eyes on the little fellow bobbing and puffing on the mat, I had my doubts. He looks more like a grocer than a burglar. Then Mr. Baggins turned the handle and went in. The Took side and had won. He certainly felt he would go without bed or breakfast to be thought fierce. As for yellow fellow bobbing on the mat, as well, most made him really fierce. Many a time he said to himself, Bilbo, you are a fool. You walked right in and put your foot in it. Pardon me, he said. If I have overheard words that you are saying, I don't pretend to understand what you are talking about on your reference to burglars, but I think I am right in believing this is what he called being on his dignity. You think I am no good. I will show you. I have no sign, on my door. It was painted a week ago, and I am sure you have come to the wrong house. As soon as I saw your funny faces on the doorstep, I had my doubts, but treat it as the right one. Tell me what you were done, and I will try it if I have to walk from here to east of east and fight the wild werewolves in the lost desert. I had a great grand uncle once, Bull Rower Took, and yes, but that was a long time ago. Said Glowin. I was talking about you, and I assure you there is a mark on the door, the usual one in the trade, or used to be. Burglar wants a good job, plenty of excitement, and reasonable reward. That's how it is usually read. You can say expert treasure hunter instead of burglar if you like. Some of them do. It's all the same to us. Gandalf took us that there was a man it's all the same to of the sort in these parts looking for a job at once, and that he had arranged a meeting here this Wednesday tea time. Of course there's a mark, said Gandalf. I put it there myself for very good reasons. You asked me to find 10th man for your expedition, and I chose Mr. Baggins. Just let anyone say I choose the wrong man or the wrong house, and you can stop at 13 and have all the bad luck you like, or go back digging coal. He scolded so angrily at Glorian that the dwarf huddled back to his chair. When Bilbo tried to open his mouth to ask a question, he turned and frowned at him and stuck out his bloody eyebrows, till Bilbo shut his mouth tight with a snap. That's right, said Gandalf. Let's have no more argument. I've chosen Mr. Baggins, and that ought to be enough for all of you. If I say he's a burglar he is, or will be when the time comes. There is a lot more in him than you guess, and a deal more than he has any idea of himself. You may possibly all lives live to thank me yet. Now, Bilbo, my boy, fetch the lamp and let's have a light on this. On the table, in the light of the big lamp, was a red shade. He spread a piece of parchment, rather like a map. This was made by Thor, your grandfather Thorin, said in the answer to the dwarf's excited questions. Is it a plan of the mountains? I don't see that this will help us much, said Thorin disappointedly after a glance. I remember the mountains well enough and the lands about it, and I know where Mirkwood is and the weathered hearth, where the great dangerous bread. There is a dragon marked in red on the mountain, said Balin, but it will be easy enough to find him without that if ever we arrive there. There is one point that you haven't noticed, said the wizard, and that is the secret entrance. You see the rune on the west side and the hand pointing to it from the other runes. That marks a hidden passage to the lower hills. Look at the map in this chapter and you will see the runes in red.